A couple of teams that feel like they found their franchise quarterbacks are going at it here in week 7. The New York Giants visiting the Denver Broncos, and we've got it all for you on Crossover Thursday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Crossover Thursday, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Giants today. We've got a lot to unpack with a couple of young quarterbacks facing some tough tests, a couple of defensive fronts that might be two of the best in the NFL. Got a great matchup between Andrew Thomas and Nick Bonito to break down, as well as how each of these teams can get a win in week 7 as they look to build off a couple of nice wins there at the end of September, beginning of October here. But Broncos Country and Giants Country want to welcome you into Crossover Thursday. My name is Sayre Bedinger. I'm the co-host of Locked On Broncos, and I'm honored to be joined by Patricia Traina, host of Locked On Giants over there. And we're excited to break down this matchup for you here for week 7, Broncos versus Giants. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Patricia, we were just talking off camera a little bit here and just vamping on, these two teams, the Broncos and the Giants. It finally feels like they've found their quarterbacks. It's been exciting to watch for the Giants, even from a Broncos fan's perspective, because obviously everybody in Broncos country is watching to find out, hey, when is Russell Wilson going to get replaced? I guess, I don't know if it's a misery loves company sort of thing or whatever, but also because you love to see teams finding their young quarterbacks, and it feels like the Giants have found theirs. Is that the top storyline going into this week, or what would you say for the Giants' perspective is the biggest storyline heading into week 7?
Yeah, it's keeping the momentum going. I mean, the Giants with a big win over the Philadelphia Eagles. We were talking about how the Broncos broke the Eagles and the Giants finished them off. At least that's what we think happened. But yeah, Jackson Dart has brought a new energy to this team that was just lacking. And going back to the end of last year when there was debate, will the Giants keep Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen? Their plan to management, their argument to retain their jobs was, let us fix the quarterback situation. Let us get our guy in here, and we'll see if we can't be a little bit better because, they had talent. They really did. And they just didn't live up to the billing because there was just, the quarterback play was a big problem. They just weren't gelling, if you will, as a unit. Now they bring in Jackson Dart, a kid who's got moxie, a kid who, looks way more advanced than I think anybody thought he would be at this point in the season. And then you throw in Cam Scatterbo, who's a little firecracker in himself. And now all of a sudden, the Giants are fun to watch again.
They are. I mean, I really enjoyed watching that Thursday night game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Like you said, feels like maybe the Broncos in that fourth quarter the previous week kind of broke them, and then the Giants finishing the job there, but also just kind of highlighting what Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen really bring to the table. It feels like last year was kind of an unfair situation for them because they inherited Daniel Jones. It wasn't like that was their guy. Like you said, Jackson Dart is their guy. And so when you inherit somebody like Daniel Jones and you maybe outkick your coverage that first year of their tenure together, I think that kind of created an unfair perception of what those guys had built. And obviously the Saquon situation, all that stuff, it's a lot all at once. But you give it a little bit of time in the NFL and you get a quarterback in that you believe in. And all of a sudden, I think you can kind of just feel from that Giants sideline, everybody sort of responding to that moxie from Jackson Dart so far.
Yeah, absolutely. After the game in the locker room, you asked any player you asked about the energy that Jackson Dart brings to the table. And they were like, yeah, it's infectious, and you could see it. Guys were playing with a little bit more pep in their step, and not just on the offense, but on the defense as well. It was almost like, hey, let's get off the field so we can put the rookie back on the field, So there was that element there. And it's just such an incredible turnaround because going back to when they were on that 3-game losing streak, the mood in the locker room was so blah. It was so down. It was like the music, which was high, in the beginning of the season, suddenly the music was dwindling down, and guys who were laughing, playing cards and doing whatnot in the locker room, all that went away. And then Jackson Dart comes in, and now it's like they've embraced this kid. he's a rookie, but he carries himself like a guy who's been there, done that. And I think his teammates appreciate that. They appreciate him for what he brings. They appreciate that he cares about them. And, that's not to disrespect Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson cared and, gave it his all and everything like that. But it's just a different type of energy that Jackson Dart brings, that youthful energy. And it's just rubbed off on some of these guys who were maybe beaten down a little bit by all the losing.
Yeah, it really feels like the vibe has changed for that organization. And now they get to go on the road to Denver into a hostile environment against a team that, quite frankly, might be a little bit worn out this week. I mean, just to be honest with you, and that might be the biggest storyline from the Broncos' perspective is how do you continue this winning streak that you're on after traveling to Philadelphia and immediately flying over to London and offensively really kind of laying an egg against the New York Jets. That was the other thing that you and I had talked about before we started this show is we kind of both expected the Broncos to do a lot more scoring against the New York Jets. We expected it to be a lot easier of a victory for them, but the Jets with their backs against the wall kind of forced the Broncos into a lot of different mistakes there. I think the biggest storyline until it's not for the Broncos is going to be, can your offense actually get going? And is this the right defense to try to get going against? Because you're going up against a defensive front that, I mean, they got Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, all these guys that can play at a, quite honestly, an elite level, right? So you're breaking into left guard for his second start this week. Bo Nix, I don't think he's been anywhere near the problem that a lot of people in Broncos country seem to think, but Sean Payton and Bo Nix getting on the same page this week against a Giants defense that's got some teeth on that defensive front, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I mentioned on my show this week, the Giants defense, the front four has been getting it done. That was a problem for them last year where they would send four rushers and the quarterback would still have all kinds of time to get rid of the ball and whatnot. This year, 9 of the Giants' 12 sacks have come from a 4-man rush, which means the Giants can now drop an extra guy back into coverage and blanket some of these better receivers that, opponents have. So, now the back end of the defense has been kind of up and down a little bit, notwithstanding, but anytime you can get home at a 4-man rush and force the quarterback off his spot, force him to make mistakes, and especially with a young quarterback, even though Bo Nix, this is his second year, he's still technically a young quarterback. And the Giants, they cranked up the aggressiveness last week on the urging of the players of all things, and it paid off. I mean, Jalen Hurts was running for his life. He wasn't able to make plays. He was contained. He couldn't get outside and pick up yardage with his legs. And I anticipate there'll be a lot more of that against the Broncos. Now, what I'm curious to see is, will they do a little bit more disguising to maybe confuse Bo Nix, something the Giants don't really do a whole lot of, but we'll see if they throw that in just for good measure.
It'll be fascinating to find out because the Broncos passing game in the second half, at least in the third quarter against the New York Jets, was kind of non-existent. I mean, a lot of times you wonder, is it Bo Nix problem? Is it Sean Payton trying to use too many different personnel groupings? Is it the receivers not separating? Like, what is the disconnect right now for the Denver Broncos? But ultimately, offensively, of course, as you know, when we've seen this team run well, as with many teams in the NFL, if not every team in the NFL, if you can run the ball effectively, man, that offense seems to get humming pretty good, whether it's run or pass. And Bo Nix hasn't made a lot of mistakes this season since week 1. I mean, he has, had his moments, right? He's missed some throws and things like that. But generally speaking, he's a guy who doesn't take a lot of sacks or put the ball in harm's way too much. Although you would kind of like to see him maybe test downfield a little bit more. So we'll see if he does that in this game against the New York Giants. And there are plenty of big time matchups in this game that could determine the winner or loser, including a pretty marquee matchup off the edge between Broncos pass rusher Nick Bonito and Giants offensive tackle Andrew Thomas. We'll talk about that and much more coming up on today's Crossover Thursday edition. Locked On Broncos and Locked On Giants. Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month because Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. And I love that you're getting the same quality of service that you had before, but for just a fraction of the price. And the setup, that can be a hassle. It's super easy with Mint Mobile. You keep your number and then you're running in minutes. So are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 required. Limited time new customer offer for the first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Crossover Thursday is also brought to you by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, right? But if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and much more. But Built isn't just about rent, it's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I love that with Built, your rent finally works for you. You're earning points every single month on something that you already have to pay. So whether you're grabbing food or heading to the gym, it doesn't matter because you're still earning rewards. Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding, from your neighborhood to your travel plans. So turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNFL. And make sure to use that link so they know that we sent you. We're all excited to find out if Andrew Thomas can be the one to finally stop Nick Bonito off the edge. And as always, the trenches are going to play a huge role in determining the outcome of this particular matchup between the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants. All of you Broncos fans and Giants fans out there listening or watching today, we just want to say quickly, we appreciate every single one of you so much for making Locked On Broncos, Locked On Giants your first listen of the day every single day. And I'm really pumped for this matchup, especially because you get to watch two of the best in the league going at it. We've seen Nick Bonito go up against a number of premier left tackles in the NFL this year. Joe Alt when they played the Chargers, obviously Jordan Mailata when they play against the Eagles, and a number of others. But this week against the New York Giants, Andrew Thomas has something a little bit different back there to protect now with a franchise quarterback of the future. Not that it changes the way that he plays, obviously, but there's a little bit more at stake now with going up against a guy like Nick Bonito in a matchup like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny. The first couple of weeks, Giant fans were getting a little restless with Andrew Thomas. Oh, they should trade him, get rid of him. When's he going to get on the field? But, they took their time bringing him back. Since he's been back, he has been unstoppable. And the funny thing is we had him on a video call on Monday, and he said, I still got a lot of things I've got to fix. And I'm like, I'm the one who asked the question. I said to him, well, what do you got to fix? Because you haven't given up a sack. I think you've given up maybe 2 pressures, and that they came, against the Eagles. I said, what do you got to fix? So he gave me a list of things he had to fix. And I'm sitting there going, gosh, if you still don't think your game is at a high level, then I'd hate to see what it looks like at a high level. It's going to be really scary. But yeah, Andrew Thomas, it's hard to kind of fathom that just one guy on a 5-man unit would make that much of a difference, but he really has. He absolutely has. Without Andrew Thomas, the Giants were averaging in the run game 36 yards. With him, they're up to 135.3. The passing game, they were averaging 115.2, 130.3 with him. So I'm like, yeah, he's made a difference. Now, the interesting thing with this matchup with Nick Bonito primarily does play against the left tackle. I wonder if perhaps they're going to move him around a little bit and maybe put him up against Jermaine Illuminor, who's the right tackle, on some plays, because Jermaine Illuminor has been solid, but Andrew Thomas has just been a human brick wall. And if I'm the Denver defensive coordinator, I probably would look to move Bonito around a little bit. I don't know if he loses anything, but Andrew Thomas, when I asked him about Bonito, he's like, this is a guy who can for power to speed and does so many things well. Has so many moves in his toolbox, and he's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges the Giants' offensive line, and in particular, Thomas has faced this season.
Yeah, he has 8 sacks already in the first 6 games of this season, and he almost had 2 against the New York Jets, but he was only credited for half each time because he didn't quite finish the job right away. So he ended up getting only credit for half a sack. So it's crazy to see his productivity, especially because the conversation around him, I suppose it's somewhat similar to what it was with Andrew Thomas and the Giants, because going into Nick Bonito's second year, Broncos fans are wondering, is this guy ever going to see the field? Like, is he going to be a roster cut? Is he going to get above Randy Gregory on the depth chart? I mean, that was the question. It's kind of funny to think back on now, knowing what we know, but he has developed into one of the league's premier rushers. And to your point, I do think that Vance Joseph will move him around a little bit, as well as hopefully get back his full arsenal of guys off the edge. This past weekend, they didn't have Jonah Ellis against the New York Jets. And I think Ellis, if he's back against the Giants, that allows Vance Joseph to do a number of different things in terms of moving Bonito to different sides of the field. But they also really trust Jonathan Cooper off the other side, who, if Bonito is attracting as much of attention as he possibly can on one side, Jonathan Cooper can handle his on the other side. He had the game-winning sack against Justin Fields and the Jets. But as I was joking with Cody earlier in the week, Patricia, who on the Broncos didn't have a huge crucial sack against Justin Fields and the Jets this past weekend? But Jonathan Cooper, he's playing well this season. I think when you look at the other side of the ball too, on the Broncos offense, Courtland Sutton, he's been their number one receiver all season long. The Jets were the first team, honestly, that did a really great job of bottling him up. He found a way against Quinyon Mitchell of the Eagles. I mean, he found a way against everyone else that they've faced, except for, I don't want to say necessarily just Sauce Gardner, but the Jets entirely kind of limited the Broncos' passing attack. What do you see as being the Giants' plan going up against somebody like Courtland Sutton, who's kind of head and shoulders above everyone else for the Broncos at wide receiver?
Well, one of my things with the Giants is hit the receiver within the legal limit. Hit him. Don't let him have a free release and get into his patterns, because the Giants' defensive secondary has been hot and cold. They haven't really, I mean, they haven't been horrible. I won't say that, but I think they could be a little bit better. So that being said, I would fully expect they're going to maybe bracket Courtland Sutton, put a guy over the top, put a guy underneath, and just kind of bracket him would make sense. Now, that will create, obviously, one-on-one opportunities for some of the other guys. My biggest concern is the role of the tight end, old friend Evan Ingram, who Giant fans know very well, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants against tight ends still having some problems. And that's what I would be concerned about if they decide to bracket Courtland Sutton, because now will the middle of the field be wide open for Ingram to do damage, So that would be my biggest concern from the pass rushing or the pass coverage perspective for the Giants.
And Evan Ingram has finally started to come on for the Denver Broncos the last 2 games. He had a really nice second half against the Philadelphia Eagles, got his first touchdown as a Bronco, and then against the New York Jets, kind of picked up right where he left off, had a big 4th down conversion. He's had a couple of plays, contested catch situations as drive starters for the Broncos in these clutch situations against both the Eagles and the Jets, that you're kind of thinking, hey, this is the difference of what the Broncos were missing last year. Last year, the Broncos leader at tight end had 19 catches. The Broncos leader at tight end had 188 yards. Evan Ingram is a game changer just by way of being out there on the field, even if he's not catching the ball. So it's a huge difference for the Broncos to have him. And I agree, that'll be a huge matchup. You and I were talking about Cam Scatterbo, the energy that he brings to the table. The Broncos have struggled a little bit this year against running backs that can create yardage after contact. I mean, Jonathan Taylor had a really good game against Denver. Obviously, Saquon Barkley had his moments, not necessarily on the ground, but as a receiver, he was dynamic, had a touchdown on a swing route. What do you see as Cam Scatterbo being a key in this game in terms of that matchup of the Giants' running offense going up against Denver's run defense?
I always call Cam Scatterbo a little human bowling ball, because when he gets going, he's going to knock guys down like bowling pins. Just a very tough, determined runner with a lot of personality. I mean,
Yes.
He's absolutely endeared himself to Giant fans. But one of his secret weapons are his hands, as a receiver out of the backfield. We saw it in training camp. And that was one of the things that initially jumped out at me. I was like, wow, this guy's pretty good with his hands out of the backfield as a receiver. So now that he's got the running the running part of it synced up, you've got a multi-weapon here where when you see him on the field, it's not necessarily going to be a run. It could be a pass. It could be he stays in the pass protect, which is, gotten better each week. So, I like that because sometimes with running backs, they do one thing better than the others. And when you see them on the field, it's almost like a sure sign as to what's coming. And I think with Scatterboo on the field now, you have to sit there and say, okay, is he going to run? Is he going to be a receiver out of the backfield? Are they going to have him into pass pro? What are they going to do? So it creates an additional, air of mystery that the Giants can use to their advantage.
They definitely can, and Broncos fans are just hoping that there's not going to be real-time regret with RJ Harvey, their rookie running back, who has had flashes this season, but certainly hasn't done anything consistently to the level that we've seen from Cam Scatterboo. Although I don't know if that's a fair comparison at this point, but at the same time, you drafted a guy in the second round. You hope to get second-round productivity. So we'll see how the Broncos do defending Cam Scatterboo. I know a lot of Broncos fans wanted him in their pre-draft mock drafts there, and now he's going to be running against them in the Mile High City. But what has to happen for each of these two teams to get a win? The Giants, they've won 2 of their last 3. The Broncos have won 3 in a row. These two teams not just trying to keep pace, they're trying to still make some noise here in the middle of the season. We're going to talk about what has to happen for each of these two teams to win on Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Giants. This Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every single ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else in 2025. And from footwork to breathwork, athletes, they sweat all the details. And Mazda, they bring that same intention to how they craft every single model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. And you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Just like our players on the Broncos and the Giants, you know what? Mazda, they sweat every single detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. What has to happen in Week 7 for the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants to get victories? Well, we're going to tell you on today's Crossover Thursday edition, Locked On Broncos and Locked On Giants. Once again, just want to say thank you to all of you that make us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, take a second, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Patricia, I'm going to defer to you first here. I don't make like score predictions typically on the Crossover. I'm fine if you want to do that. You can feel free, but I'm interested to know from you. I think, just kind of looking into the crystal ball a little bit here, the Giants will win this game if. Answer that question for all the listeners out there.
Well, first off, I'm not going to make a score prediction because I never get it right. I don't even come close. So I don't like to make score predictions unless, somebody puts me on the spot. So I wanted to get that out of the way. Good. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the matchup. We can't have Nick Bonito destroying the Giants' backfield. That's number one. And I think Andrew Thomas, just to build off of what I said last segment, I think he should be able to handle Nick Bonito by his lonesome, which is, a plus. But for the Giants, if you go back and you look at their losses, they all have a common denominator. And that common denominator, mistakes, self-inflicted wounds, whether it be a pre-snap penalty, whether it be a turnover. I mean, we saw the Saints game, 5 turnovers. I mean, you can't win games if you're going backwards or you're giving the ball away. You just can't. So, the Giants, they have talent. They just need to stop hurting themselves with stupid mistakes. And, the Broncos, their defense in particular, is very opportunistic. So you can't be gift wrapping, interceptions or fumbles. Ball security is a huge thing. One of the things with Jackson Dart that I still wish they would kind of clean up in his game, when he runs with the ball, sometimes he kind of is reckless. He'll swing it out there, doesn't hold it high and tight. And I'd like to see him maybe work on that a little bit more, because I sit there and I go, don't lose the ball. So that's something I think is number one. I know that's a piece of low hanging fruit there, but that's obviously the first thing. I think the other thing with the Giants they've got to take what the Broncos give them. That defense is, I think, the number 1 or the number 2 defense. It's up there in the top 5. Very, very tough customer, not just because of Nick Bonito, the whole group and how Vance Joseph has them playing. So when you have that, take what they give you. Don't try to force things into, tight windows or do anything that, is going to come back to bite you later on in the game. So that's key. And then the third thing I'll say is get after Bo Nix. He's still a young quarterback. That pass rush of the Giants has been pretty good. So if they can get after him, maybe confuse him a little bit, rattle him a little bit, I think the Giants could come out of Denver with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bo Nix, he doesn't take a lot of sacks, but pressure will get to him, and he'll get sloppy footwork, and he will overthrow passes, things like that. So it's not just about not taking sacks if you're Bo Nix. It's about actually making throws under duress, under pressure, because these guys that the Giants have, they're going to get theirs. I mean, that's just when you're playing against elite players at any position, they're going to have theirs. Elite receivers, they're going to get their catches. Elite running backs, they're going to have their big runs. Elite pass rushers, they're going to get their pressure. So the Broncos and Bo Nix can't expect the pass protection to pitch a shutout in this game. I will say, and you said low hanging fruit. I think it's, at this point in the season, I mean, you want to run the ball, you want to create turnovers, you want to get to the quarterback, you want to be efficient, you want to take care of the ball. I think for the Denver Broncos, it's kind of the opposite of what you said. The Broncos have not forced a turnover since week 3. I mean, it's been rough to watch. And I think that when you see the way that this defense plays, like you said, they are opportunistic. They almost had one against Garrett Wilson. I don't know how it wasn't a turnover in that particular play, but the Broncos have to find a way to start creating takeaways off of their defensive dominance, because you get to a quarterback for 9 sacks in a game and you don't punch the ball loose on a single one of them. I mean, easy for me to say, sitting here in my office chair saying, hey, why don't you just punch the ball out when you get to the quarterback? It's not always that easy, obviously, but this defense has to start imposing its will in different ways and creating better field position for the offense. Another area the Broncos have to be better if they want to win this game. They've got to be better on kickoff coverage. The Broncos have allowed the most kickoff return yards per return of any team in the NFL and the third most overall kickoff return yards. It was so bad, Patricia, that earlier this week, the Broncos signed JT Gray off the Baltimore Ravens practice squad, a guy who was kind of surprisingly cut by the Saints, but has some history with Sean Payton and Darren Rizzi as an all-pro special teams player. The kickoff coverage has been so bad this year that they're literally signing guys right now to try and atone for their roster building sins. And so I think that's a huge area. Is it comes down to field position. I mean, like you said, it sounds like low-hanging fruit, but if you're not winning the field position game, you're setting up any quarterback. I don't care if it's a rookie like Jackson Dart or whoever. If you set them up with good field position, NFL teams are going to find ways to take advantage.
Yeah, and you mentioned special teams, and guess what? The Giants' special teams are like top 5 in all the major categories. They have been very, very good. We don't talk about it a whole lot. We probably should, but the Giants have won field position, I think, in 4 of their first games. So, they did it against the Eagles. I think they beat the Eagles in field position by a good 10 plus yards. So that is a big, big factor that, again, doesn't get mentioned a whole lot because we look at the marquee matchups, but the Giants special teams, the return game, the coverage game has really turned around from being, a weak spot, which it was like a year or 2 ago.
Especially in today's NFL, where the kickoff rules are different. Every team is kind of adjusting and adapting. It does feel like we've seen an abnormal amount of special teams, either big plays or mistakes by teams that have cost you. I mean, the Broncos have experienced it firsthand. You get a leverage penalty called against the Indianapolis Colts. Right now, that's the difference between the Broncos being on top of the AFC and kind of fighting and battling with the Chargers and the Chiefs for a position in the AFC West in general. So it's interesting to see how big special teams has become this season. But I think Broncos fans and Broncos country in general expected a lot more out of special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi, who was a very highly renowned and regarded special teams coach as the interim coach of the Saints last year. So going to be interesting to see what these two teams do in this particular matchup. Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo, they're coming on the road to the Mile High City to face off against the Denver Broncos. It'll be exciting. It's going to be a fun one. Broncos Country knows what it's like to kind of be in that beginning stages of hopefully discovering your franchise quarterback. And like you said, Patricia, when we were about to start this one, a little bit of just a pep in the step around the Giants organization going into this game.
Yeah, let's hope it keeps up. I mean, the Giants are coming off 10 days in between games. The Broncos, as you said at the start, a lot of traveling. So how are they going to function? I don't know if that's an advantage or a disadvantage. I mean, I guess it all depends, but it should be a good one. The Giants, that momentum has to carry over. And I think if they keep carrying it over and saying, yeah, we can beat these tough teams, these playoff teams from last year, that whole argument about the tough schedule now goes out the window.
We'll see what these two teams do here in week 7. It's going to be a huge momentum swing either way for both of these squads. If the Giants can win, that'll be 3 of their last 4. If the Broncos can win, man, they'll be in a great position to be able to make a run here in the AFC West as the season rolls along. But Broncos fans, Giants fans, we appreciate you so much for tuning in today. Make sure you stay locked in to Locked On Broncos and Locked On Giants for everything that you need leading up to this game, as well as every single day during the week. You know that we've got you covered. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL. Amazing content being created every single day over there as well. But we appreciate y'all so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.